Over the past few days, South Koreans have been noticing some pretty bizarre objects flying overhead. Giant balloons like this, with small plastic bags attached.
장소를 지정을 해서
It was so creepy and scary. Everyone was so scared at that moment.
The military recorded hundreds of these things, and they say they were all coming from North Korea. They sent bomb squads, chemical weapons experts to investigate, worried that this could be some sort of terrorist attack. But so far, all they've found is this. No bombs, no chemical weapons, just cigarette butts, batteries, old shoes, water bottles, and animal feces. Ugh. So why is North Korea sending a bunch of trash into South Korea? So let's try to understand this. North Korea spends an incredible amount of its budget, more than a quarter of its money, on its military. And now it's floating garbage balloons across the border. What's the goal exactly?
I don't think the intent here was to harm or destroy anything, but it was clearly a symbolic message, basically giving South Koreans a taste of their own medicine.
Yes, if you ask North Korea, South Koreans started it. Because just a few days earlier, 20 big balloons floated across the border from the south to the north, carrying 300,000 pro-democracy leaflets.
North Korea warned of retaliatory action against the distribution of anti-Pyongyang leaflets in border areas by North Korean defectors and conservative activists in South Korea.
Now keep in mind, the vast majority of North Koreans have no real connection to anything beyond their own borders. TVs and radios are all preset to government channels. Most people don't have internet. North Korean phones can't make international calls. And the border is more or less completely shut, meaning there's virtually no way for humanitarian or activist groups in the south to reach people in the north unless you go by air. They've been pumping balloons full of helium and just letting them set sail over the border. Sometimes they're carrying leaflets, but other times it's USB sticks full of K-pop music, Korean soap operas.
South Korean activists who care very much about North Korea and North Korean human rights want to get information into North Korea. Many of them are North Korean defectors who defected from North Korea. They're the ones that have really led this cause.
The goal, of course, being to expose North Koreans to the outside world, but also to try and convince them to rise up against their leaders. And this kind of thing has been going on for decades. They've sent over booklets painting South Korea as a kind of democratic utopia, videos of US lawmakers scolding North Korea for its human rights record, even scenes from movies with a message.
I hear that absolutely everyone here is starving to death.
It's quite all right. This is a common misconception.
Oh, okay.
Back in 2015, Vice journalists actually followed some of these South Korean activists to the border and watched as they launched dozens of these balloons into the air.
This is a banner of Kim Jong-un that will be flying with the balloon fluttering in the background and hopefully flying over Pyongyang.
So maybe now you understand what might motivate North Korea to send garbage back. And apparently, they've been doing this for a long time too. In 2016, it sent over a whole bunch of balloons loaded with cigarette butts and leaflets calling the South Korean leader at the time an evil witch. And then, a few years later, it told its citizens that the South Korean balloons crossing its border were carrying COVID-19.
It's ironic that they're saying, well, if you're sending balloons over, we have every right to also send balloons over to South Korea.
Now, in 2021, South Korea actually passed a law banning its citizens from launching these balloons over the border, arguing that all it was doing was provoking North Korea. But their courts later struck down that law because it infringed on free speech, which could be why North Korea is now also calling its balloon deliveries an expression of free speech.
One thing that is interesting to note, North Koreans, when they criticize North Korean defectors who've gone into South Korea, when they criticize South Korea, they often use this term that's translated into human scum or trash. They have no shame. They're a pariah state.
Now, on some level, this does all sound, I don't know, a little childish, right? Until you realize how it fits into a much larger, much more dangerous picture. For starters, it's hard to do anything about the balloons except just kind of wait for them to come down. Shooting them out of the sky could be dangerous, and if you're on the ground, you don't actually know what's in those packages until you get up close, right? Meantime, what happens if one of those balloons hits a power line? But even setting all that aside, the experts we spoke to say this isn't really about balloons or leaflets or garbage. It's North Korea telling its neighbors to back off. Over the past few months, they say North Korea has become more and more worried about what's going on near its border.
South Korea and the U.S. have held their first joint combat shooting exercise of the year.
Pyongyang has angrily reacted to the allies' drills, calling them rehearsals for a nuclear war.
Earlier this month, the U.S. and South Korea carried out a big joint aerial military exercise. Fighter jets flying over South Korea, but near the border. And North Korea says they've also flown at least 16 of these reconnaissance planes over the Korean peninsula over the past 2 weeks. They're accusing the West of spying on them. And what's more, according to North Korean state media, Kim Jong-un sees all of this as a precursor to an invasion.
So we've seen North Korea continue provocations, whether it's missile tests, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles. I think the biggest concern is really the tit for tat, potential for escalation. And I think because North Korea now has political allies that are willing to back it, I feel that they don't see the need to really engage with the US, with South Korea, or really the West. So that's why we may be seeing a more emboldened Kim Jong-un and perhaps more provocations moving forward.
It's hard to predict what North Korea will do next, but these trash balloons definitely seem to be part of their plan. They've threatened to fill South Korean streets with mounds of waste, 10 times whatever the South sends the North. So for now, South Korea is telling people near the border to watch out for flying objects and, if possible, to avoid hanging out outside.